Canada is often seen as calm, stable, reasonable, safe. But beneath the surface of good branding and polite headlines, something quieter is happening. People are tired, not just from working hard, but from watching things get harder no matter how hard they work. The price of a home feels like a life sentence. Rent rises faster than paychecks. Public services feel slower, thinner, less reliable. Immigration policies invite the world, but often forget to make room. Wages don't match inflation. Middle-class life feels more like survival. Young people delay families. Parents go without rest. Seniors stretch what little they have to stay afloat. And while some are thriving, many are quietly slipping. Not because of one choice, but because the entire system feels like it's drifting. Something is off. You can feel it in how people talk, in how they trust less, question more, scroll faster, sleep worse. It's not panic. It's not collapse. It's erosion. A slow, quiet unraveling of faith in the future. And while politicians debate symptoms, most Canadians are living the consequences. This documentary isn't about blame. It's about truth. Because you can't fix what you won't face. And right now, we are facing the cost of delay, distraction, and denial. But if this country is to hold together, not just economically but emotionally, we need more than reform. We need repair. It doesn't always make the news. There's no siren, no crash, no dramatic event. But ask around, at the grocery store, in the waiting room, on the bus, and you'll hear it. I don't trust the government. I don't believe what the news says. They're all the same. It's not anger. It's not even outrage anymore. It's withdrawal. A quiet stepping back from institutions once built on public confidence. And without trust, even the best systems stop working. It's not just in politics. It's in healthcare, where appointments take months and people turn to Google before a doctor. It's in education, where parents question what schools teach and teachers burn out behind locked classroom doors. It's in the media, where headlines blur into noise and truth competes with clickbait. It's in justice, where outcomes feel unequal and accountability feels like an illusion. And slowly, the feeling grows. Maybe the system isn't broken. Maybe it's working, just not for me. Once, institutions gave people something to stand on. Government meant safety, schools meant opportunity, news meant truth. Now those same structures feel distant, abstract, slow. Not corrupt, necessarily, but disconnected, built for someone else. And so trust shrinks, not in a burst, but in a slow, grinding fade. Surveys show it clearly. Trust in government? Dropping. Trust in media? Lower than ever. Trust in banks, universities, law enforcement? Depends on who you ask and where they live. For some, the issue is ideology. For others, it's race, class, region, or experience. But the outcome is the same. More Canadians are tuning out, opting out, giving up. Not because they don't care, but because they're tired of caring without results. Politicians often frame this as cynicism. But that's a mistake. What's happening isn't apathy. It's a defense mechanism. When people see the same problems for years with no change, when they feel ignored, when outcomes depend more on wealth than on need, they stop expecting anything. And that's more dangerous than anger. Because anger can lead to action. Apathy just walks away. And in that vacuum, something else rises. Distrust becomes fertile ground for conspiracies, for strongmen, for simplistic answers to complex questions. When people stop trusting mainstream institutions, they don't stop needing explanations. They just find new sources, often online, often unaccountable. That's how false narratives spread. That's how democracy breaks, not from a single vote, but from a million people saying, "What's the point?" But here's the thing about trust. It can't be commanded. It can only be earned. Slowly, through transparency, through accountability, through listening that leads to action. You can't tell people to believe. You have to give them reason to. Not with perfect results, but with honest effort. Rebuilding trust starts small. A health clinic that keeps its promises, a teacher who goes the extra mile, a mayor who shows up, not just for press, but for people. When systems respond, when they serve, people return. Not overnight, but eventually. Because trust, once broken, is slow to heal. But it can heal. Canada doesn't need to be perfect, but it does need to be real. That means admitting when systems fail, apologizing when mistakes are made, correcting course, not doubling down. Trust won't come from slogans. It will come from showing up, over and over again. The erosion of trust is not just a public relations issue. It's a democratic emergency, because when people stop believing the system is theirs, they stop protecting it. And what's left is not community, not citizenship, just individual survival, on a shrinking island of belief. But we are not there yet. There is still time to repair. Trust is fragile, but it's also powerful. Because when people believe again, in each other, in leaders, in shared purpose, they don't just participate, they build. And that is how a country comes back from the edge. Not through spectacle, but through quiet, consistent effort to deserve the people's faith. For generations, the message to young Canadians was clear. Get an education, work hard, save what you can, build a future. But today, those steps no longer lead anywhere predictable. Instead of progress, young people face stagnation. Instead of opportunity, they face a wall of costs, delays, and disillusionment. They're told they have more freedom than ever. But in reality, they have fewer paths to stability. They are more connected, more informed, and more anxious than any generation before them. Consider the basics. Housing is unaffordable. Wages haven't kept pace with inflation. Debt is a starting point, not a last resort. Many graduates enter the workforce burdened with loans, only to find contract jobs with no benefits, no security, and no way to plan. The idea of buying a home feels mythical. Starting a family? Deferred indefinitely. And as climate change, automation, and global instability rise, they're left wondering not just how to thrive, but how to survive the century they're inheriting. This isn't laziness, it's logic. When hard work no longer guarantees a return, the equation breaks. And when institutions dismiss the frustration of youth as entitlement, they miss the deeper reality. This generation isn't asking for comfort. They're asking for a future that feels real. Many feel betrayed by governments that promised affordability, but delivered austerity, by education systems that charged more and delivered less, by markets that reward speculation over effort. The trust that once linked generations has frayed. Parents want to help, but many can't. Older leaders offer sympathy, but rarely solutions. And young people are left to figure it out alone. In the most expensive, uncertain, and distracted society Canada has ever produced, mental health is the quiet thread tying it all together. Anxiety, depression, burnout, these aren't occasional visitors. For many young Canadians, they're the background noise of daily life. Not because of weakness, but because of overload. Too much pressure, too little support, and a cultural silence around the weight they carry. When the future feels uncertain, it's hard to enjoy the present. And yet, this generation is not apathetic. They vote. They organize, they create, challenge, and protest. But what they lack is representation. In Parliament, in boardrooms, in the policies written about their lives. They're often talked about, but rarely included in shaping what comes next. That has to change. If Canada is to remain a country of opportunity, it must stop expecting young people to carry the future on broken foundations. That means bold action, tuition reform, housing access, mental health care that doesn't come with a 6-month wait list, jobs with meaning, not just tasks. The goal isn't to make life easy. It's to make life possible. The cost of ignoring this generation is massive, not just in lost tax revenue or delayed family formation, but in trust, in innovation, in civic engagement. If young people feel the system was never built for them, they will stop trying to fix it. And if that happens, we don't just lose a generation. We lose the future they could have built. The truth is, young people haven't failed Canada. Canada has failed them. But the beauty of this generation is that they haven't given up. Not yet. There is still belief, still energy, still a vision for something better. The question is, will anyone listen before they walk away? On paper, Canada is a model for immigration, a points-based system, a multicultural identity, a government that speaks the language of inclusion. But for many newcomers, that paper doesn't match the reality. They are welcomed in theory, but made to struggle in practice. They arrive with hope, credentials, ambition, and often end up navigating a maze of bureaucracy, barriers, and broken promises. Immigration isn't just a process, it's a journey of trust. Trust that the rules are clear. Trust that the opportunities are real. Trust that effort will be rewarded. But too often, that trust is shaken. Credentials are dismissed. Work experience is undervalued. Support services are underfunded. And what was pitched as a pathway to permanence feels like a treadmill of uncertainty. Temporary foreign workers, international students, refugee claimants, they all keep Canada running. But few are treated like they truly belong. Many work jobs that are essential but invisible. Many are underpaid, overworked, and underprotected. And their legal status? Often contingent, fragile, tied to contracts they can't negotiate. That's not inclusion. It's vulnerability, wrapped in policy. The pandemic exposed just how fragile things are. Migrant workers kept food on shelves. Nurses from abroad filled critical gaps in hospitals. International students paid tuition that kept universities afloat. But when borders closed, jobs disappeared and visas lapsed. Many were left unsupported. And Canada was forced to confront a hard truth. Citizenship, in practice, is tiered. Not everyone gets the same safety net. Behind every immigration program is a deeper question. Are we building a system that invites people to contribute? Or one that uses them until it's inconvenient? Because when you ask people to uproot their lives, you owe them more than a permit. You owe them dignity, stability, a real place in the future they're helping to build. And yet, immigrants continue to rise. They start businesses. They staff the front lines. They send their children into Canadian schools with hope. But resilience is not a replacement for justice. And gratitude should not silence critique. Many immigrants carry quiet burdens: isolation, credential rejection, subtle racism, all while being expected to say thank you for the chance. If Canada wants immigration to work long-term, it needs more than open doors. It needs clearer pathways to permanence. It needs to simplify the rules, standardize assessments, hold employers accountable. It needs to stop treating immigrants as economic inputs and start seeing them as full citizens in waiting. The public narrative must also shift. Immigrants are not the problem. They are not the crisis. The crisis is a system that welcomes with one hand and excludes with the other. One that benefits from their labor, but resists their leadership. That applauds their success, but ignores the barriers they overcame to achieve it. Citizenship is more than a document. It's a feeling, a signal that you are not just tolerated, but trusted. That you are part of the solution, that this country, in all its imperfection, is also yours to shape. The next chapter of Canadian immigration can't just be about numbers. It must be about belonging. Because when people feel at home, they give back in ways no policy can measure. But when they feel expendable, they never truly arrive. And a country that treats its newcomers as temporary builds a future on sand. When people think about inequality, they usually think about income, paychecks, hourly rates, minimum wage. But in today's Canada, income is just one part of the story. The real gap, the one that's quietly transforming everything, is about wealth. And wealth doesn't come from working more. It comes from owning dash. Property, stocks, businesses, assets that grow while you sleep. And for millions of Canadians, that door was never open. Here's the truth. The middle class used to be defined by what you earned. Now, it's defined by what you own. If you bought a home before 2005, your net worth likely doubled or tripled without lifting a finger. But if you rent, or you're young, or your parents couldn't help with a down payment, you're locked out of the single greatest wealth-building mechanism in Canadian history. And the longer you wait, the further behind you fall. This isn't just a housing issue, it's a structural shift. One where people who live off their wealth pay lower taxes and face fewer risks than people who live off their labor. In Canada, capital gains on your principal residence are tax-free. Dividends and inheritance often go untaxed. But wages? Taxed at every step. The result? People who work for a living pay more than people who already have. That's not a free market. That's a rigged system. This new divide is generational too. Boomers on average hold far more wealth than Gen Z or millennials, even when adjusting for age. It's not just that they worked harder. It's that they bought homes when prices were reasonable, got degrees without crushing debt, and built careers before job security disappeared. Today's young adults inherit not just less money, but less opportunity and more debt. Race and geography matter too. Indigenous communities, racialized Canadians, and rural residents have been historically excluded from asset-building systems. Redlining, credit access, discriminatory lending, and underinvestment. They've all left lasting scars. And when generational wealth compounds, so does generational exclusion. That's how inequality becomes entrenched. Not just in bank accounts, but in entire communities. So what's the consequence? A society where opportunity is inherited, not earned. Where wealth protects against every risk, from job loss to health emergencies, while the rest of the population lives one crisis away from collapse. Where buying power, political influence, and future security are concentrated in the hands of a shrinking few, and where working hard no longer gets you ahead. It just keeps you in place. This isn't inevitable, but it is deliberate. Wealth grows where policy allows it to. And right now, Canadian tax policy, housing policy, and financial regulation all reward accumulation, while offering little to those starting with nothing. The system isn't broken. It was designed this way. Fixing the divide means making bold choices, taxing wealth fairly, building housing that people, not investors, can access, reducing student debt, protecting renters from predatory landlords, making saving and ownership possible for more Canadians. Not to punish success, but to rebalance the opportunity scale. Because when wealth becomes dynastic, democracy becomes fragile. People disengage, resentment builds. And instead of one country with shared ambitions, you get two nations. One that owns the future and one that rents it. Inequality isn't just about numbers. It's about access to freedom, to security, to possibility. And until Canada confronts the new wealth divide, it will continue to reward luck over effort and quietly lose the very fairness it claims to stand for. It's the feeling you get on hold with a government line. The wait at the ER, the lost paperwork, the underpaid teacher, the bus that never comes. It's not dramatic, not explosive, just slow, frustrating, and everywhere. Canada's systems are overloaded, and for many people it feels like nothing works anymore. Across the country, core services, the ones meant to support everyone, are buckling. Healthcare wait times are the worst in modern memory. Affordable housing is so rare it's become a lottery. Public transit can't keep up with population growth. Education systems are stretched, underfunded, understaffed. And when something breaks, the fix isn't fast. Because the fix is often stuck in layers of approval, bureaucracy, and outdated systems that weren't built for this level of demand. Why is this happening? In short, scale and speed. Canada's population has grown rapidly through immigration, urbanization, and longer lifespans. But the systems meant to support that population haven't grown with it. Clinics don't open fast enough. Classrooms don't get built fast enough. Infrastructure doesn't get funded fast enough. And the result is that modern Canada is running on yesterday's capacity. Add to that, policy lag. Every system, from housing to health to employment, is designed with assumptions that no longer match reality. Assumptions about who needs help, assumptions about what people can afford, assumptions about how fast things move. But today, needs are more complex. Expectations are higher. And change moves at the speed of technology, while government moves at the speed of paperwork. Technology, ironically, has made some systems worse. Websites crash. Forms are hidden in layers of confusing design. Algorithms make decisions without accountability. And while digital access is meant to expand opportunity, it often replaces human contact with automated denial, especially for seniors, newcomers, and people with disabilities. A system can be fast or fair, but today, it often feels like it's neither. Meanwhile, frontline workers are burning out. Nurses, teachers, social workers, bus drivers. Many of them entered their fields out of a desire to serve. But now, they face staffing shortages, unrealistic expectations, and rising hostility. People are angry at the system, and workers become the face of that system. The result? Turnover, shortages, disillusionment, and a growing sense that the people holding the country together are being pushed out of it. For everyday Canadians, the experience is numbingly consistent. You wait, you call, you get transferred, you follow the rules, and still, you don't get what you need. So people start cutting corners, paying privately, giving up. And that's when public systems begin to fracture, not just in performance, but in purpose. Because when only the most privileged can bypass the system, through private clinics, private schools, private connections, what remains is a two-tier society. One group waits, the other moves ahead, and the idea of a shared Canada begins to disappear. The answer isn't just more money, it's modern design, data-informed policy, human-centered service, cross-sector collaboration, local empowerment, and honest leadership. Canada's problems aren't unique, but they won't solve themselves. Because a country can't run on old blueprints forever. At some point, you have to rebuild. Not just patch. If nothing feels like it's working, it's not because people stopped trying. It's because the systems we rely on were never built for this much pressure, this much complexity, this many people. But they can be rebuilt. If we start with the truth, that modern Canada deserves modern systems. Not ones that barely hold on, but ones that move, serve, and restore trust in the promise of the public good. It's not a warning anymore. It's not a prediction. It's here. Climate change is no longer a distant threat. It's a daily reality. And Canada, once seen as a cold, stable refuge, is now one of the fastest warming countries on Earth. The fires are bigger, the floods are stronger, the seasons are shifting, and the question is no longer if we act, but whether we're already too late. In 2025, Canada is experiencing its third consecutive year of devastating wildfires. Manitoba and Ontario are burning. Over 100 fires are active. Thousands have been evacuated. Lives have been lost. In Lac du Bonnet, Manitoba, 2 civilians died after flames overtook their home. This isn't just a bad season, it's a new normal. Fires now start earlier, burn longer, and return year after year, even smoldering through winter as zombie fires that reignite with spring. The heat is relentless. Winnipeg broke a 125-year-old temperature record this May, hitting 37 degrees Celsius. And across the country, heat waves are becoming more frequent and intense. The government's climate forecast predicts 2025 will be warmer than every year on record prior to 2023. These aren't anomalies. They're part of a trend that's accelerating. The Arctic is warming 4 times faster than the rest of the world. In Qikiktaruk, Herschel Island, Yukon, permafrost is thawing, causing the land to collapse. Historic Inuvialuit buildings are at risk of being lost to the sea. Researchers are racing to digitally preserve these heritage sites before they disappear. But digital archives can't replace a homeland. And for Indigenous communities, the loss is deeply personal. In Northern Ontario, First Nations communities are witnessing their traditions erode. Warmer winters and disappearing ice are shortening seasons, making it difficult to engage in customary events like broomball, ice fishing, and hunting. Melting ice roads force residents to take expensive flights instead of using traditional routes. Ceremonies that rely on local plants and subsistence hunting practices are under pressure due to shifting animal migration patterns and environmental changes. Climate change isn't just altering the environment. It's threatening cultures and ways of life. Economically, the impacts are staggering. By 2025, Canada is projected to see $25 billion in additional losses each year from warming, relative to a stable climate scenario. These damages could rise to $100 billion annually and result in the loss of 500,000 jobs by 2055. Insurance premiums are rising. Grocery prices are affected by droughts and floods. The cost of inaction is mounting. Politically, climate change is slipping down the priority list. An April 2025 poll found that only 5% of Canadians said climate issues would most influence their vote. More than a third cited the cost of living as the top issue. Despite the clear and present dangers, immediate economic concerns are overshadowing long-term environmental threats. Yet there is progress. Canada's emissions are now the lowest they have been in 27 years, excluding the pandemic years. The emissions intensity of our economic growth has decreased by 34%. The government has also committed to protecting 25% of Canada's land and waters by 2025 and 30% by 2030. These are steps in the right direction. But are they enough? The reality is, mitigation alone won't suffice. We must adapt. The Climate Change Adaptation Program, CAP, aims to support decision-makers in identifying and implementing adaptation actions. Investments are being made in community resilience, especially in the North and across Canada. But adaptation requires more than funding. It demands a shift in mindset. Climate change is not a future problem. It's a present crisis. The fires, floods, and heat waves are not isolated events. They are symptoms of a system under stress. Canada must confront this reality head-on, not with fear, but with resolve. Because the fire next time is already here. And the choices we make now will determine the Canada we leave for future generations. Canada prides itself on innovation. AI labs in Montreal, tech startups in Toronto, green energy clusters in Vancouver. The image is sleek, forward-thinking, globally competitive. But for many Canadians, the digital economy feels like a club they're not invited to. Because as the country accelerates toward a high-tech future, a growing number of people are being left in the dust. For years, we were told that digital transformation would make life easier. And in some ways, it has. We can bank, shop, apply for jobs, and see doctors without leaving home. But not everyone is benefiting. Over 1 in 10 Canadians still lack reliable internet access. In rural and northern communities, broadband is limited or non-existent. In urban centers, affordability is the barrier. And for newcomers, seniors, and low-income households, even owning a functional device is not guaranteed. But access is just the first gap. The second is literacy. Knowing how to navigate digital systems, identify misinformation, and use technology safely and effectively. We assume digital fluency is universal. It's not. And when services move online without training or support, they don't empower, they exclude. Then there's the labor market. Canada's most profitable sectors, tech, finance, biotech, require digital skills that many workers simply don't have. Retraining programs exist, but they're underfunded and inconsistent. And while automation grows, so does precarity. Especially in retail, hospitality, and transport, where algorithms now manage hours, performance, and termination. Workers don't get promoted, they get replaced. Innovation, without inclusion, creates new hierarchies. Education systems are scrambling to keep up. Coding is being taught in elementary school. But outdated tech, overworked teachers, and rigid curricula slow progress. Meanwhile, private schools and wealthier families give their kids early access to robotics, programming, and AI tools. This is how digital class divides are born. Not from talent, but from unequal exposure and opportunity. Even in cities that brand themselves as smart, the benefits are uneven. Traffic sensors improve commutes for those with cars. App-based services streamline lives for those with credit cards and smartphones. Meanwhile, people without digital access face longer lines, slower responses, and outdated services. Technology doesn't always level the playing field. Sometimes it widens it. The risks go deeper. AI is being used to screen job applications, determine loan eligibility, and monitor workplace productivity. But the data these systems are trained on can carry bias. And when decisions are made by algorithms, they often lack transparency and appeal. Who's accountable when a system gets it wrong? Too often, no one. Canada urgently needs a digital justice agenda. One that ensures innovation is not a luxury, but a public good. That means universal broadband, device subsidies, digital skills training, regulation of algorithmic decision-making, and design that begins with inclusion, not afterthought. The goal isn't to slow innovation, it's to align it with equity. Because a country that invests billions into AI and automation, while millions struggle with online forms, is building a two-speed society. And once that divide sets in, it's hard to close. Technology can change everything, but only if it lifts everyone. If it expands access, rather than concentrating power. And if the digital dream is to become a Canadian reality, we must ensure it's not built on invisible exclusions. It doesn't always look like crisis. Sometimes it looks like silence. Like someone powering through, like I'm fine, with a forced smile. But behind closed doors, in bedrooms and break rooms, on commutes and couches, Canada is carrying an invisible weight, and it's getting heavier. Mental health used to be whispered. Now it's everywhere, in campaigns, on billboards, in hashtags. But even as awareness grows, the support doesn't always follow. Clinics are overwhelmed. Therapists have wait lists. Community programs are underfunded. And for many, help is still a privilege, not a guarantee. Across the country, anxiety, depression, burnout, and trauma are rising. Among youth, among parents, among elders. Suicide is the second leading cause of death for Canadians aged 15 to 34. 1 in 5 people report needing mental health care but being unable to access it. For Indigenous communities, racialized groups, and newcomers, the barriers are even higher, and the silence more profound. The workplace tells people to be resilient, but resilience has become a mask for exhaustion. Workers are juggling unstable hours, high demands, and low control. Students face crushing debt and unclear futures. Parents carry emotional labor on top of financial stress. And digital life keeps attention fragmented, sleep interrupted, and self-worth tethered to screens. This is more than a personal problem. It's a public health emergency. And yet, systems respond with delays and gatekeeping. Therapy is expensive. Public programs are hard to access. Mental health days are stigmatized. Even when help exists, it often doesn't speak the language, culturally, spiritually, or literally. Healing isn't one size fits all, but policy often treats it that way. There's also a myth that things are worse because people are weaker. But today's world is more overwhelming, more precarious, more relentlessly stimulated than ever. The crisis isn't in the people, it's in the pressures. Mental health isn't failing, it's responding to impossible expectations and insufficient support. We need to change the narrative from tough it out to you deserve help, from reactive care to preventive ecosystems. That means embedding mental health services in schools, workplaces, and communities. It means funding long-term care, not just short-term crisis hotlines, and building systems that see people before they break. The next step isn't just more awareness. It's access, equity, and compassion. Policies that understand mental health as foundational, not optional, and a culture that values wellness over productivity at any cost. Because a country where people are constantly coping is not thriving, and no economy, no innovation, no institution can hold if the people inside it are falling apart. The silent strain is telling us something, not about weakness, but about a system that's too loud, too fast, too unforgiving. And the strongest thing we can do is finally stop pretending we're okay when we're not. Social safety nets are meant to catch us when we lose a job, when we get sick, when rent is due and the paycheck doesn't stretch. In a just society, they're not luxuries, they're guarantees. But in Canada today, that net is fraying, not all at once, but stitch by stitch. Once, programs like employment insurance, welfare, and housing assistance were the backbone of middle-class resilience. Today, they're often a maze. Eligibility rules that exclude. Delays that turn crisis into collapse. Payments that don't reflect real costs. And so, people fall. Not because they failed, but because the system failed them. Employment insurance? Only about 4 in 10 unemployed Canadians qualify for it. Welfare often comes with deep stigma and clawbacks. Disability support requires jumping through hoops to prove worthiness. Over and over again. These systems don't offer protection, they offer paperwork. For many, applying for help is exhausting. Long forms, inconsistent phone lines, confusing portals. Hours lost chasing $200. And behind each request is a person already under pressure. Trying to stay housed, trying to feed kids, trying not to break. The pandemic briefly showed what's possible. When CERB was introduced, help came fast. No lengthy reviews, no years of backlog. It wasn't perfect, but it met people where they were, with trust. Then it ended. And now we're back to the old model. Prove your need. Wait your turn. Hope it arrives before the eviction notice. The deeper issue is philosophy. We treat help like a reward, not a right. We assume people will abuse generosity, even as evidence shows most don't. And so, we make systems hard. Not to serve the vulnerable, but to police them. This isn't about money alone. It's about design, about building programs that are fast, fair, and easy to access, about replacing suspicion with service, about trusting people to know what they need and meeting them there. Other countries are experimenting. Universal basic income, guaranteed childcare, rent caps, automatic tax credits. These aren't radical, they're efficient, humane, scalable, and they recognize a simple truth. When people feel safe, they build. Because the real cost of a broken safety net isn't fraud, it's the energy lost navigating broken systems. The families pushed to the edge, the kids who carry stress instead of dreams, and the trust that quietly drains out of public life. If Canada wants to rebuild resilience, it must rebuild the net. Not as a last resort, but as a foundation, so that the next time someone falls, they don't fall through, they land and rise again. For 3 hours, we've walked through complexity, housing that's out of reach, wages that fall short, systems stretched thin, promises broken. But this chapter isn't about what's wrong, it's about what's possible. Because beneath the frustration, beneath the noise, something else is stirring. Not despair, but resolve. Canada has always been more than policy, more than metrics. It's a living idea. That people from different places with different lives can build something together. That fairness is not an accident, but a decision. And that we don't inherit the future, we create it. Right now, that future is uncertain, but it's not beyond reach. We can have housing that is homes, not hedge funds. Work that pays enough to live. Healthcare that heals. Schools that prepare. Systems that respond. And a climate strategy that protects more than paper targets. It will take courage. To tax fairly. To invest boldly. To design with inclusion. It will take listening, not just to experts, but to people who live the gaps every day. And it will take rejecting the lie that things cannot change, because they already are. The only question is, in what direction? Will we double down on inequality? or designed for dignity? Will we let convenience decide policy or center people over profit? The answers aren't simple, but they're not out of reach. We've rebuilt before, after war, after recession, after silence, and we can do it again. Not by going back, but by going forward, differently. Canada's story isn't finished, and the next chapter isn't up to any one politician. It's up to all of us. What we demand, what we defend, what we believe is worth building. After the storm, there's always a choice: to retreat or to rebuild, smarter, fairer, together.